The purpose of today's video is to talk about proportions, including what they are, how to write them, and then how to solve them once you have them written. This video is just for kind of extra information to support what we've done in class, so if you need to skip around a little bit, feel free to do so. This is here just kind of to give you a refresher on all things proportions. So let's start by talking about what a proportion is. A proportion is an equation that states that two ratios or fractions are equal to each other. Okay, so let's just look. For example, we could have a proportion that says 1/2 is equal to 4/8, right? It's just an equation telling us these two fractions equal each other. You might also have something that says 3/5 is equal to 9/15. Okay? And one thing that's unique about proportions is that if you multiply your diagonals, so if we multiply 2 times 4, we get 8. And if you multiply this other diagonal, you also get 8. Same thing happens over here. 9 times 5 is 45, and 3 times 5 is also 45. Alright, so what's really interesting about all proportions is that when you multiply their diagonals, they're equal to each other. Okay, and that's going to come back to us in a little bit when it comes time to solving proportions when we are missing one of the 4 numbers that you see. And we can kind of generalize this rule by saying that for any proportion, A over B equals C over D, then it's also true that A times D is equal to B times C. So A times D is equal to B times C. Or the product of the diagonals is equal to each other. Alright, let's say you're given this proportion on the screen. 4/12 equals blank out of 84. There's a few different ways that you can solve this proportion. Okay, one of them is using cross multiplication, where you're building off the idea that the product of the diagonals is equal to each other. So if I want to use cross multiplication for this one, I'm going to show that 4 times 84 is equal to 12 times x, right? The product of the diagonals is equal. So I'm going to write 4 times 84 is equal to 12 times x. And again, I got that 4 times 84 equals 12 times x. And now we just need to continue solving here. So 4 times 84 is 336. And then I'm going to bring down the rest of the equation. So this is telling us right here that 12 times some number equals 336. So to figure out what that is, I'm going to take 336 and divide it by 12, and I get x equals 28. Okay, so that tells us that 4/12 is equal to 28/84, or that those two are equivalent fractions. Alright, there's other ways we could solve this though, guys, and I want to make sure that you can see a couple different ones here, because you might find one you like better. So another way that works for this proportion is to see how many times bigger is my denominator than my numerator. Okay, so I know that 4 times 3 is 12, so that means that 84 has to be 3 times bigger than my x. Okay, so another way to find x here is to go, well, what's 84 divided by 3, and I'll also get an answer of 28, just like I did over here. Okay, so that's a second way that you can solve this. And then another way that you can see kind of a pattern going on here within this proportion is to look across, okay, and say, well, I'm going from 12 to 84. I want to know how many times bigger is 12 than 84. Well, 12 times 7 is 84, so to get x I can do 4 times 7. And 4 times 7 is 28. And again, I get the same answer as I did in both of the other methods that we tried. Let's see how writing and solving a proportion can help us solve a story problem here about Ben. Okay, it says Ben and his friends are having a TV marathon, and after 4 hours, they have watched 5 episodes of the show. About how long will it take to complete the season, which has 24 episodes? Alright, well, let's start by figuring out what's the rate that we're given. Alright, and I know that after 4 hours they've watched 5 episodes. So that's 4 hours in 5 episodes, okay, or 5 episodes in 4 hours. All right, and I want to know how long it'll take them to watch 24 episodes. Well, I'm going to put this episodes across from my episodes over here so that we can be consistent across the proportion. So we have 24 episodes, and we're looking to see how many hours it will take them. Since that's what we're looking to find, we want to put an X there. We want to show that that's the piece of the puzzle we're trying to solve for. Okay, and now we can use cross multiplication to figure out what X is. So we'll do 4 times 24, and we know that that's equal to 5 times X, because remember, the product of the diagonals in a proportion is equal to each other. Okay, so we need to figure out 4 times 24, and that would be 96, and that's equal to 5x. And then to figure out x, we have to take 96 and divide it by 5, and we get 19.2 is equal to x. All right, but don't leave it like that. We want to make sure that we answer the question, which actually says, how long will it take to complete the season? So I will write 19.2 hours. All right? All right, let's read another one here. If a box of 100 pencils costs $4.75, what should you expect to pay for 225 pencils? Okay, first I'm going to look to identify the rate that we're given, and I see that 100 pencils is $4.75. That's going to be one part of my proportion. It doesn't matter if you put pencils on top or dollars on top, just so long as you include your label and again you're consistent across your proportion, like we were in the last one. So 100 pencils is $4.75, and we want to know what we're going to pay for 225 pencils, so I'm going to put 225 across from my 100 pencils because those have the same units, the same labels. And we're looking to find the price, so we're going to put X underneath where the dollars would go. All right, and now we'll use cross multiplication again to show that the product of the diagonals is equal to each other. So 100 times X equals $4.75 times 225. And I'm going to make sure to write that step out to show each of my steps here. So 100 times X equals $4.75 times 225. And now we need to solve to figure out what X is. So 475 times 225 is equal to 1068.75. And all of that is still equal to 100x. And now to figure out what x is, I need to divide both sides by 100. And 1068.75 divided by 100 would give me about 10.6875. All right, now I need to look at this in terms of the problem, though, to make sure that my answer makes sense before I write it. So it says, what would you expect to pay for 225 pencils? Well, this isn't really the finished answer. We need to add a label to this. So I'm going to say 10 point, and I'm going to round to the nearest hundredth since we're talking about dollars and cents here. And so this would be about $10.69 for a box of 225 pencils. All right, let's take a look at Steven here. He receives 20 minutes of video game time for every 45 minutes of dog walking that he does. He wants to walk he wants 90 minutes of game time, so we want to know how many hours he will need to work. Okay, we've got a couple things going on here that I noticed right away, minutes and hours. So we're going to remember that at the end, that we want our answer in hours. But let's look at this. He gets 20 minutes of game time for every 45 minutes of dog walking that he does. So I'm going to write that rate in my proportion right away. 20 minutes, and I'm going to just after this put like VG for video game, so I remember that my video game time is on top. And then I'll do 45 minutes of DW for dog walking on bottom. Okay, and now we want to know how many hours he'll need to work if he wants 90 minutes of game time. So game time I put on top on the left, so I need to put it on top on the right. So I'm going to do 90 minutes of video game time, and we want to know how many hours he'll need to work. This is going to be how many minutes he'll need to work, and then at the end we'll have to convert it. Okay, and his work here was dog walking, we see. So I've got my proportions set up, and that can usually be the toughest part, I think, for people. Now we just want to use cross multiplication to solve for x. So 90 times 45 is equal to 20 times x. And 90 times 45 is 4,050. And all of that is equal to 20 times x. So now I'm going to do 4,050 divided by 20 to get my x, which is 202.5. Okay, now remember, our original proportion was set up in minutes. So this is 202.5 minutes. But the question asks us how many hours he'll need to work. So we've got 202.5 minutes, and we know that there's 60 minutes in 1 hour, and we have 202.5 minutes, and we want to know how many hours that would be. So I can use cross multiplying again here to solve this. 202.5 times 1 equals 202.5 divided by 60, and I see that x is equal to 3.375 hours. Okay, you didn't have to set up this proportion here. You could have just taken 202.5 divided by 60, and you would also end up at that same amount. All right, we've got another one here. The tax on a $600 vase is $54. What should be the tax on a $1,700 vase? Okay, let's start by looking at what we know here. $600 vase is has tax of $54. So I'm going to do my total on top of my tax. And just to make sure that I keep it straight, I'm going to put total and tax so there's no mix-up when I write out the other side of my proportion. All right, and we're looking for the tax on a vase that costs $1,700. So I'm going to put my $1,700 on top, because that's the total amount of the vase, and the tax is what we're looking for. And just as the reminder to myself, I like to put the label there too, that it will be tax and it will be in dollars. Alright, so let's set our diagonals equal to each other. So we're going to say 1,700 times 54 is equal to 600 times x. And 1,700 times 54 is equal to 91,800. And I'm still setting that equal to this right-hand side. And now to solve for x, I need to do 91,800 divided by 600, and I get 153 is equal to x. So to go back and answer the question, what should be the tax on a $1,700 vase? The tax will be $153. Alright, our last example here includes some fractions, and I don't want you to be scared away by that, alright, because it's the same process. It says, while baking, Evan discovered a recipe that required ½ cup of walnuts for every 2 1/4 cups of flour, and we want to know how many cups of walnuts will he need for 4 cups of flour. So first, I look back to the problem to identify what my ratio is here, and I see that I need 1/2 cups of walnuts for every 2 1/4 cups of flour. And we're looking to figure out how many cups of walnuts he'll need for 4 cups of flour. And I like to input, I chose to put my W for walnuts and F for flour, and over here I'm going to put XW for my X number of walnuts. It really helps me keep track of what goes on top and what goes on bottom so that I keep my proportion lined up correctly. Alright, so now I need to do cross multiplication, and I see that 1/2 times 4 is equal to 2 1/4 times x. All right, so let's bring back your fraction multiplication skills. You guys know 1/2 times 4 is 2, and 2 is equal to 2 1/4 x. Now you have to divide by 2 1/4 to figure out what x is. So I'm doing 2 divided by 2 1/4. And if you can remember back to last chapter, let me zoom out a little here. When we had to divide, sorry guys, I'm moving all over the place. When we had to divide mixed numbers, you learned that you need to turn them into improper fractions first. So I'm going to do 2 over 1 divided by 9/4. All right, and remember when dividing fractions, don't just flip the second number and then multiply. So 2 over 1 times 4/9 is going to help me get my answer here. 2 times 4 is 8. 9 times 1 is 9. And so I will need 8/9 cups of walnuts. Again, notice I'm going back and putting my label on there just to be sure. I hope you found this a little bit helpful in helping you write and solve proportions. And as always, guys, come find me if you need help with this more one-on-one. All right, thanks for your time and have a great afternoon. Bye.